Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch with your host Kriti Mishra. The Department of Science and Technology has published the Draft National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020. The objective of the policy is to identify and address strengths and weaknesses of the Indian STI ecosystem to catalyze socio-economic development of the country and also make the Indian STI ecosystem globally competitive. The policy states that its aim is to achieve technological self-reliance and position India among the top 3 scientific superpowers in the decade to come, to double the number of full-time equivalent researchers, gross domestic expenditure on R&D and private sector contribution every 5 years, build individual and institutional excellence in STI with the aspiration to achieve the highest level of global recognitions and awards in the coming decade. And for deeper insights on the topic, I'm joined by Professor Ashutosh Sharma, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, and Professor Abhay Karandikar, Director, IIT Kanpur. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, both of you.
Thank you.
Professor Sharma, coming to you first. The draft Science, Technology and Innovation Policy contains radical and progressive proposals that could be game changers for not just the scientific research community, but for the way ordinary Indians interact with science. Take us through the crucial highlights of the policy.
Indeed, Kriti, science is not only for scientists. Of course, the scientists are the ones who produce science, but it's consumed by all sectors of society. So idea indeed in this science policy, the overarching idea is to create an end-to-end science and technology ecosystem that fully reaches and empowers every citizen of the country. So there are, if I were to tell you very quickly why we need a policy in science and technology, and indeed what are the problems that we are addressing by it. So first of all, you see, science and technology is the foundation on which our life is built today, but even more so going in the future. Now, this future is coming at us at faster and faster rate. It is an exponential future in technology. So we have to be totally ready for it. For example, the rise of intelligent machines, which is going to impact every aspect of our life, our skills, our education, our jobs. Sustainable development, these things were not very well understood even 10 years ago. Sustainable development. Now, there are aspects of sustainable development which are related to science, technology, and innovation. But equally, there are aspects of it which are related to society at large. So this is a very wide, shared, distributed responsibility. So unless we bring scientific temper in our citizens, unless they understand the value of science and technology, whole lot of what's going to become to planet and to us depends a great deal on disseminating our science, creating the right kind of science, having direction in science, empowering science, and through science, empowering our society. Yes. So these are the overarching goals indeed of the policy, which is that, of course, we need to focus on creating knowledge or scientific knowledge, but it's equally important that that knowledge gets into our industry, gets into our startups, gets into our NGOs, all the people who are going to be using science and technology, and gets into our line ministries, whether it's railways, water, energy, what have you. So essentially, the overarching aspect that I would say for the policy is to connect, for example, connect invention with innovation, connect the knowledge creation with knowledge consumption, connect a center with the states, bring in new partners of science and technology. You see, science and technology is too important to be left only to one department or only to a set of scientists. It has to be all pervasive. Science and technology is not a vertical. Often people think, once you made a ministry of science and technology, that's enough. That's not enough. The science and technology is equally owned and used by everybody. Yes. And so whole point you see, Kriti ji, is that to bring that coherence, to bring that holistic element into doing our science and technology. And there are many dimensions to doing that. And this is what we would be discussing. So when you dissect the policy, there are 11 chapters in it, and you see that each one of these themes actually relates to this overarching theme. Is about empowerment, is doing great science, is doing good science, but also getting that science to everybody who needs it.
Absolutely, sir. All right, so the larger goal is to empower our society, and we'll get into the specifics of the policy in just a bit. But Professor Karandikar, India has had 4 national science and technology policies before this. Scientific Policy Resolution 1958, Technology Policy Statement 1983, STP 2003, and STIP 2030. How will the new policy ensure decentralized and bottom-up approach?
I think, as Professor Ashutosh Sharma already mentioned, that one of the overarching aspect of this policy has been empowerment and connection of science and technology with the innovations and its impact on the society. And I think that is one of the very important aspect of this. In fact, the policy has given enough focus on creating a robust science and technology innovation ecosystem, which promotes, not only the knowledge creation and the fundamental research, but also the translational research, which actually connects the science and technology innovations with the society. In fact, I think, as was rightly mentioned by Professor Sharma, and the policy has given it in detail, that the science and technology innovations today is not just the part of one Ministry of Science and Technology, but it has impact on all aspects of the economic development of the country. And therefore, the policy talks about, then when we say about our increasing our R&D expenditures as a part of the the gross domestic products, then it should also relate to making sure that all ministries have science and technology innovation cells, and they spend a part of their budget or their outputs on the science and technology innovations. Because ultimately, whether it is the Ministry of Urban Housings, or whether the Ministry of Road Transports, or whether the Ministry of Environment, or whether it is the Ministry of Railways, or it is the Ministry of Telecommunications, or the Ministry of Electronics, all really need to contribute to the science and technology innovations. And of course, the other emphasis is on the interdisciplinary and collaborative research, which is also a very significant aspect of this policy, because now again, you cannot do the scientific or technology innovations by just becoming an expert of one field.
True.
You really need to do this collaborative research. You really need to do multidisciplinary research or interdisciplinary research in order to make a big impact, both from the point of view of knowledge creations and also from the point of view of societal impact, which ultimately contributes to the economic growth of the country. So I think these are really, I would say, in my opinion, are some of the aspects that were sort of different from the previous policies. And in fact, that is why this policy is also rightly named as Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. So I think that is what the difference is.
That's a very valid point that you're making, Professor Karandikar. But Professor Sharma, for India to march ahead on a sustainable development pathway to include economic development, social inclusion and environmental sustainability for achieving an Atmanirbhar Bharat, a greater emphasis may be needed on promoting traditional knowledge systems, developing indigenous technologies and encouraging grassroots innovations. How will the proposed policy pave way for these objectives?
Indeed, you see that there is a wealth of traditional wisdom and knowledge out there. It's just that that body of knowledge has been a little bit static, and also that it has not been advanced by using modern tools of science and technology. So clearly that this has to be integrated in all our approaches of research and development. So the whole point is that if we today we have a lot more of science, understanding, and tools. So if we were to work on our traditional wisdom, understand whole lot of it may even have been diluted over time and lost. We have to reconstruct all of it. Just to give you an example, whole lot of modern science is about crisis management in health, whereas a whole lot of traditional wisdom in health is about lifestyles. So it's something that we need to integrate in our modern ways of doing, health management, for example. And there's a wealth of information out there. So anyhow, the grassroots innovation is another very, very important aspect. What does grassroots means? It means, to recognize the local need of our population, which may vary from place to place, may vary from let's say farmers to women living in small towns and so on. So it's not something that a multinational company is going to focus on. This is a problem that we need to recognize, and we need to offer solutions to those problems and indeed scale them up. So this is where India can take the leadership role, that we don't have to be followers all the time. Look, if it is our problems, we have to solve them. And clearly the way to solve them is to fuse the modern science and technology approaches with the grassroots needs and the solutions. It is no longer about jugaad in the modern world. See, we have survived with jugaad in the days of crisis, but now is the time to bring in the proper science and technology, even to grassroots innovation, to make them optimal, to make them scalable, in fact, to make them relevant for half the world out there. Whether it is Africa, whether it is a whole lot of nations in Asia, they have similar needs as us. And so recognition of those needs and filling those gaps is certainly a big part of this policy.
Well, absolutely, sir. As you mentioned, that it's no longer the era of jugaad, and we have to have a systematic approach. But Professor Karandikar, the major highlight for me from the draft policy was that at least 30% representation of women in all decision-making bodies and inclusion of the LGBT community into conversations related to gender equity are the major focus points of the draft Science, Technology, Innovation Policy 2020. These are extremely progressive ideas. How do you foresee the impact of such a proposal on equity and inclusion going ahead?
Yes, I think equity and inclusion has been, one of the important thrust of this policy. In fact, as was mentioned by Professor Sharma, that there are 11 chapters. One entire chapter is dedicated in the policy on equity and inclusions. And I think for any country, as as already mentioned, that if you really want to have a societal impact and economic prosperity, it is extremely important to have our technology and innovations to be all inclusive. And therefore, in this context, it is also important to increase the representation of, for example, women in science and engineering. In fact, since I'm from an engineering and technology institutes, it is even more important to increase the representation of women in the technology and the engineering disciplines. We now see, there is a reasonable representation of women in some of the scientific disciplines, particularly the biological sciences and the life sciences. But the representation of women, particularly in the technology and the engineering disciplines, has not been quite adequate. And I think this policy emphasizes a thrust on this, and it is really imperative for higher educational institutions and our other scientific institutions to take a decisive step to increase the representations of women and make it all inclusive. So I think
let me just very quickly add to that. What
Yes,
Dr. Karandikar said is very true. See, one aspect of diversity, which includes gender is the biggest part of diversity and inclusion, And so are the young people, empowering young people at an early stage. So now, one aspect of this diversity in gender is clearly the socio-economic impact. We cannot have a society and economy which is running on a single wheel. That is very clear. But even beyond that, diversity has a very special meaning. The meaning is that you see that all our problems, whether it is sustainable development, whole lot of these problems involve different perspectives. They involve different stakeholder bases. So we cannot have diversity of perspectives in addressing our problems fully unless women are a big part of it. So having different perspectives and understanding our problems and offering relevant solutions for them and taking these solutions forward, we require everybody's participation. So gender equity inclusion is not simply a lip service. It has a very deep fundamental meaning. And these deep fundamental meaning, in fact, you see in nature. Now, I know I'm going a little bit away from what you were asking, but this is so, so important for our viewers to understand that there is diversity in nature. You
Yes.
see, when you talk about movement, it's not everybody walks. Some people, fishes swim, some fly. So there are so much diversity, and the reason is very simple. If you don't have diversity, then you may be very optimal, but we are all clones of each other, and clones of each other, they would all fall the same way. The first virus, which is fatal for one, will be fatal for all,
Right.
right? So diversity brings the meaning of robustness. So no matter what the challenge is, you have many different ways of dealing with it. You have a lot of different perspectives.
Yes, sir.
Indeed, as was pointed out, that this policy is very focused on those aspects. Just to give you an example, there's going to be a new rating and ranking framework. Other
Yes,
words,
sir.
whatever we cannot measure, we cannot make progress in that, we cannot put in right actions. So, it's not to make anybody look bad, but to take stock of where we are as an institution, as different colleges, universities, R&D labs, what have you, so that people are able to measure their progress against certain targets which are very important for inclusion,
Right,
for
sir. And
equity.
as you say that the policy also talks about ease of doing research and benchmarking. But Professor Sharma, another important aspect, the draft also talks about open science framework and one nation, one subscription. Help us understand these concepts.
Yeah, certainly. So this is aspect which is part of, a broader vision, which is to say democratization of science and inclusive nature of science reaching everybody. Now, this is fairly clear that, that the information, data, knowledge on science cannot be limited only to some scientists, maybe 1 lakh, maybe 2 lakh. It has to be something which is reaching out to several crores of people because they are all stakeholders of science and technology. They need to learn something. They want this data, information, knowledge. So there are three aspects of it. The first aspect is to have actually a platform on which all publicly funded, data, information, and knowledge is freely available with ease of access. Data, as they say, is new oil, but I would go much farther and say data is the new water. We don't have time to talk about it, but data is the overarching important reality of the world in which we live, and we are going to be living tomorrow for governance, for planning, for development. So let this data be available to everybody, whether it is geospatial data, whether it is for anything, down to panchayat level, down to every citizen. Second aspect, as you pointed out, is one, uh, all the scientific journals, magazines, and so on being available to everybody from school children up. And you see, right now is very fragmented. So every IIT, every college, every whatever they can afford, they do their own negotiation, but that's not very optimal. And
Yes.
we are spending as a nation right now far in excess of 1,500 crores every year in order to subscribe to these journals. Now, I'm sure that we have the muscle as a nation to negotiate all of this and then make all these resources available to everybody who can make use of them. All right. The third aspect is an open repository of all the research in the country. so that we know who is doing what. And then, if a industry, MSME, startup, a farmer, a fisherman, a woman, whoever, they need to have access to this knowledge so they know where to approach. Right. So the point is to have transparency, to have that accountability, to have that ease of doing business. So all of
Yes.
that is going to be done by having this very open access platform to information and knowledge resources. See, remember, all the
Right.
viewers, we no longer, the economy, the strength of society and economy no longer depend only on the flow of materials and energy, as was the case until Industrial Revolution 3. Today, it is the ownership of data, the flow of data, the manipulation of data, building upon data, bringing knowledge into that is what is going to empower our society, our industry as a whole.
So you made a very interesting point there that data is new water. But moving on, and before we end this conversation, Professor Karandikar, 2020 has been a year of science for India and the world. What are the learnings from the COVID-19 pandemic for India's science and technology sector, and how does the draft policy address those learnings?
So I think the COVID-19 pandemic really taught us that the importance of technological self-reliance. And I think this is, and in fact, our Honorable Prime Minister, therefore, also, gave us this clarion call of Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Yes.
And this is not just, I would say, a clarion call, but really a strategy in the current geopolitical scenario for making our country, science and technologically sort of a superpower. Because unless, we have the technological self-reliance, we reduce our dependence on the import of the products that we saw in the COVID-19. Actually, when the pandemic struck, we were completely actually unprepared in terms of whether you talk of the PPE kits or the masks or even, very high-end medical equipments like ventilators and so on. But India showed that in the, in a period of almost 120 days that we were not only, producing this, but we started actually exporting, also these devices. And that really showed that we have the right talent and the potentials. What we really need is that to create a sustainable innovation ecosystem, which will make us, the technologically self-reliant, that will create, intellectual property rights, and that will create our business and the entrepreneurship ecosystems also, which can commercialize or productize, these kinds of scientific innovations which are happening in our research labs. And more recently, we have seen this even in the form of the vaccines development as well. So I think this entire thing is very rightly emphasized in the science, technology, and innovation policy. And I'm sure that once the policy gets implemented and put into action, given the potential that the country has in terms of our young scientists, and by having this equity and inclusion of all the strata of the society, we would be able to make a huge impact not only at our national level, but also at the global scale.
Professor Sharma, do you agree? Closing comments, last 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Not only agree, of course, I will just add that you see the key point is this. We have strengths in our silos, but our weaknesses have been them working together, which means the connects between these silos. Now, what are these silos? They are often described as the three major silos, which are described as the triple helix, which is called the government, industry, academia, and R&D. I start calling them now a love triangle. So three parts of this triangle: government, industry, academia. You see, they all work. We some of them generate knowledge, but that knowledge then get consumed in the industry, right? So now, what happened in COVID-19 time is that there was a clear purpose, there was a clear direction. This is what we need. We need ventilator, which is world class.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. And so all of these three love triangle people, they came together spontaneously, right? So we didn't have to push anybody. So the message here is, look, if we can define what are the critical products and technologies in which we need to be Atmanirbhar, then these three people working together, co-owning that, sharing that vision, and not really competing with each other,
Yes.
and not totally understanding each other, that would actually do it. And this is part of this policy. Not
Well,
only that,
absolutely. Right, sir. And the focus
science
is to
and
make Indian
technology, of
STI
course.
ecosystem globally competitive. On that note, thank you so much for joining us on this erudite discussion. So that's all we have for you in this edition of Policy Watch. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.